Welcome to Crispy Girl Flicks, Johnnyman.
Set in the bustling city of New York, the nightlife is bubbly and fun. June and her boyfriend, John, attend a cocktail event. The daytime activities in the city are equally as lively, as John and June also meet for a picnic at the park. June is a food critic who has a column in a local magazine. She was raised by her grandfather, who now stays in a home for elderly persons, and she goes to visit him often. 3 weeks later, the world is hit by a pandemic. Streets are empty as the government shuts down schools to keep people safe. June decides to get out of town, but her train is delayed. While trying to decide what to do, a self-centered man asks her for money, which she reluctantly gives to him as he says he's got the virus. He proceeds to call her selfish for hesitating. She ignores him and goes to get another train ticket. But the attendant can't help her as all trains are canceled. She suggests to June to order a LYFT to her Airbnb, located just outside the city. June clearly takes the suggestion and gets into a conversation with the LYFT driver, who gives her hand sanitizer, something that is now very scarce due to the pandemic. She gets a message from her boyfriend, John, saying he's concerned about his parents and is going to meet them in the city. June is quite disappointed as they were supposed to go on this trip together, but she responds with okay to the text. The countryside is so beautiful and June spots a deer. She mentions how she hasn't seen a deer since she was a child. Upon arrival at the Airbnb, she searches for the key, but cannot find it. She tries to make a phone call but realizes that her phone is dead. This triggers a mini panic attack. The door opens and a man she assumed to be the owner steps out. He introduces himself as Charlie. June says that her boyfriend booked the Airbnb for a week. Charlie says that he also booked the Airbnb, albeit the day before. June says they booked it on Sunday and notices he's got a car. She tries to sweet talk him into leaving and going to a hotel since they booked before him. Charlie refuses the offer, and June goes off on him about being stressed after a long day. She needs a bath, a place to charge her phone, and sleep. Charlie takes her bags in, offering her the bedroom to sleep in while he sleeps on the couch. He announces that they would have to share a bathroom because there's only one. June jumps in the shower and reaches out for a towel on the ground. Giving it a little sniff, she realizes it belongs to Charlie and she is totally grossed out by it. She drops it faster than she picked it up and proceeds to dry off with her own clothing. While she puts on her clothes, she vigorously applies hand sanitizer while frantically begging God not to get the virus from this strange guy whom she calls gross and disgusting. June later gets on the phone with the woman who booked them the Airbnb to explain the situation. June is informed that the woman and her husband are going through a divorce and they must have double booked the house separately. June asks for a refund, if possible, but does not get a response to that. June searches for a wine opener that she's certain she packed but doesn't find it, and in a desperate move, tries to use her shoes to pry a bottle of wine open. She finds the wine opener while Charlie comes upstairs to use the one bathroom that they have to share, and she opens the wine bottle but spills some in the process, almost hurting herself. Charlie checks on her from outside the door and after making sure she's okay, excuses himself to go back downstairs where he'll be spending the night. Downstairs, Charlie listens to the news where the terrible situation with the pandemic is explained and non-essential workers like non-healthcare professionals are required to stay at home. Charlie picks up a FaceTime from his mom, who has been worried that he's not taking his calls. Charlie reveals that he can't go to work as they're closed. Charlie's mom is concerned about money, but he assures her that he has money saved up and he's fine. Charlie's mother asks about his girlfriend and he explains that it didn't work out, and she comforts him as he's clearly still hurting as a result of the breakup. June gets on the phone with John, who explains that he fully intended to be where she is, but after stopping by to see his parents, they seem scared and he simply could not leave them alone. June is not excited but says she understands. John is glad she's not in the city as she's safer outside the city where she is. June wakes up to the sound of turkeys gobbling, birds chirping, and such serenity. She passes by Charlie, who is asleep on the couch, and proceeds to pour herself a cup of coffee. She steps outside to take in more of the serenity around her. June then gets on a FaceTime call with her grandfather, who is still at the care home. Although suffering from what appears to be dementia, he fondly remembers very clearly how he met his beautiful wife, but asks June for her name. She says she's his granddaughter, but he can't remember who she is and says he doesn't know her. June responds that she knows him and loves him very much. He asks her to sing again and she obliges, even though she had sung to him before. She sings Blue Moon while her grandfather joins in the song. Her singing catches Charlie's attention, who is in the bathroom upstairs, brushing his teeth. June goes to the bathroom door to enter, obviously forgetting that there's someone else in the house, and that she should knock. She swings the door open while Charlie stands over the toilet seat. June screams in pure embarrassment, while Charlie closes the door shut. June goes back into the room, still slightly mortified by what just happened. Her friend draws her attention to a social media post made by John's colleague, Carol. It is a picture of John with Carol, with a questionable caption. June calls her friend and they discuss the post and June's relationship with John. June feels neglected as John chose to spend time with his family during the lockdown, instead of her. Her friend thinks she's overreacting about the picture and John's choices, and that John didn't do anything to intentionally sabotage their relationship. June reveals to her friend that she's not alone in the house, and her friend thinks she's very fortunate as it might result in a beautiful friendship at a time when the whole world is hurting. Downstairs, June sits in the kitchen. She tries to order some food, but can't as they all seem to be closed due to the pandemic. Thankfully, Charlie walks in with burgers and fries for both of them. June is appreciative but opts for the fries alone. She recently started her journey to a vegan diet because her boyfriend, John, thought it would be a good idea for both of them. She tries to stick to it, although it's hard because of her job as a food critic. Self-conscious, she also comments about how she usually puts more effort into looking better than she currently does. But Charlie doesn't think she needs makeup, which makes June blush a little. After the food, they hang out in the living room, and to make small talk, June asks what Charlie does for work. Charlie says he repairs and restores old stuff, motorcycles, and basically anything old. June says she loves riding as her grandfather used to love it too, but she's scared to ride by herself. The conversation gets easier and they talk about roots, college, and work. Charlie thinks the pandemic will affect a lot of businesses and will drag out for a while, but June does not see that as she thinks she will be back to work in 2 weeks. She comments that the pandemic has taught everyone to put things in perspective and reevaluate what is important. Seeing as June seems to care a little too much about what people think of her, Charlie states that he doesn't care too deeply about things like that. June wonders if he wants her to leave in the morning, and Charlie says she can stay if she wants, obviously enjoying her company. It's morning. June wakes up on the couch and realizes that they fell asleep talking. She steps outside to call John but can't reach him, so she leaves a message asking about his parents and telling him she misses him. She proceeds to do some writing, taking advantage of the serene environment. Charlie finds out that they are now required to wear face masks, and with the use of a sewing kit in his car's glove compartment, he gets to work making one. June joins in on the project and they have fun with it. They drive out to get some food and afterwards sit in the car to eat it. While in the car, they talk about the dangers of losing oneself while dating someone for some time, because June might feel guilty about devoting herself to her vegan diet. Charlie thinks she should not worry about those things. Whatever decision she makes, she will be just fine. Charlie's phone rings and it's his ex-girlfriend, Evelyn. She asks him to come to pick up his things at her place. June notices the sharp change in his mood and suggests karaoke. Charlie is a little taken aback by the offer and is reluctant, but they do it and have loads of fun with it, and they end up in bed together. By morning, Charlie feels very unsure and decides to leave the Airbnb, while June sleeps. He makes it to the outskirts of the city and stops. Meanwhile, June wakes up and takes a shower with a big smile on her face. She gets out of the shower and dries off with Charlie's towel, which she had initially felt was disgusting and gross. She even sniffs it to take in more of his musky scent. June then calls John, obviously failing to reach him. She leaves another message, this time asking that they go on a break as the pandemic seems to be taking its toll, and so that he can pay more attention to his family who needs him. Assuming that Charlie is still in the house, heads downstairs to find that he's gone and so is his bag. June is so disappointed and she calls her friend and confides in her telling her everything, and how she already started to like Charlie, but he left. She wants to go back home, especially so that she can see her grandpa. Her friend consoles her and tells her to come back home and come visit her. June agrees, and as she heads out the door, Charlie comes back. Although she already booked her LYFT and has him waiting in the driveway, Charlie admits that he panicked a bit and left because he didn't want to seemingly take advantage of her vulnerability. June says she felt like she was the one taking advantage of him. Charlie assured her that she was not. June decides not to leave and cancels her LYFT. Charlie and June cook food in the kitchen and have a picnic outside while they talk about growing up in Charlie's house. Charlie says his mother was worried about her kids since their father passed away while they were so young, and so she had a lot of people in the house to help keep tabs on them. At night, over a game of cards, June receives a call telling her that her grandfather just passed, and is pretty devastated by the news. Charlie steps up to hug and comfort her. The next day, June comments about how she can't give her grandfather a proper burial because of the pandemic, and Charlie comforts her still. The next day, he lets her sleep in and brings her a beverage. He finds bicycles in the garage and suggests they go out on a ride. June's mood is lifted by the bike ride, and while riding, Charlie asks them to stop in front of a motel that catches his attention. He gets off the bike to take pictures. He says it reminds him of a place where his mom took his brother and him when their father died, and if the world was ending, he would go to a place like that to spend his last days. When they arrive home, June talks about her grandfather while they roast marshmallows over the fireplace. June says her grandfather stepped in to raise her after her parents passed, and he did it like he was supposed to do it without thinking twice. She expresses disappointment in the fact that she didn't get a chance to say goodbye to any of them, and asks if Charlie had a chance to say goodbye to his dad. Charlie says he did, but it didn't do anything to help the pain ease. It still hurts, but it's okay. June asks Charlie about the phone call in the car while they eat. Charlie explained that it was from his ex, Evelyn, who used to cheat on him regularly. He found out because she mistakenly dialed his number, and he overheard her admitting to her friend that she regularly cheats on Charlie. After a confrontation, Evelyn denies it completely, despite the evidence that Charlie has, and makes him seem like a crazy person, and then she breaks up with him over a text message. June feels so bad for him, but they move on to enjoying their s'mores and end up in bed. It's now the 1st of April and June continues to write using the serene environment as inspiration. Charlie finds art supplies and excitedly gets June to paint together. June praises Charlie's enthusiastically done art piece, while June actually has the true masterpiece. June suggests that they call Charlie's mom to find out how she is doing. Charlie is nervous but agrees, and they FaceTime his mom and are able to have a pleasant conversation. John shows up at the Airbnb and Charlie gets the door. June quickly steps in and asks that they talk. John is surprised to see that she moved on already, but June thinks she's given him long enough time, and he decided to show up only after she wanted a break. She says the world feels like it's ending and she's scared. John thinks they can make things work despite how stressful world events might seem. Meanwhile, Charlie calls his mother again as he feels awkward just sitting, waiting for June and John to talk things through. Meanwhile, John informs June that his father passed away from the virus 3 days ago, but he is even more pained that he cannot give him a proper burial due to the pandemic. June can relate to that feeling and attempts to inform John that her grandfather also passed, but John doesn't give her a chance to say the words, as he is so focused on his own pain. June comforts him and hugs him. Charlie decides to leave the Airbnb and go back to the city. As he heads to the car, June tries to talk to him. He asks what is going on as he thought things were done between John and June. June explains that it is over, but John's father just passed and she cannot break his heart and leave him all by himself. John says he understands and asks her to make sure she never forgets herself. They hug goodbye and painfully let go. Charlie drives away. Later in the day, June makes dinner, which was the norm between Charlie and herself due to the lockdown. But John is not interested in any of that and leaves her to it. Charlie heads back into town and arrives home. Meanwhile, John orders food at the Airbnb, and it arrives, and he does a phony job of keeping safe and haphazardly sanitizes the delivery food. June is done cooking and eats the food she made while John eats the food he ordered. The next day, June heads out on the early morning bike ride. She gets back and hits the shower. John asks her about it and is surprised that she knows how to ride a bike at all. They talk about the future of their jobs in light of the pandemic. June casually asks about John's assistant, and he says the company might have to let all assistants go. She reveals she has been writing and John is impressed, but he hits her with hard facts and says she should write a cookbook instead of a novel. He undermines her influence while at it. This upsets June and she decides to take a walk. Later that night, as the tension between them rises, June declines the offer to go to bed with John, choosing to remain downstairs to finish a movie she's seen. John then realizes that they are clearly both struggling. By morning, John had packed both their bags and wanted them to go be with his mom as she is alone after the death of John's father. June picks that moment to mention that her grandfather also died. John is sympathetic and says he now realizes that they don't need each other at the moment. Meanwhile, Charlie adjusts to being back home as the world adjusts to the spread of the virus. He brings his mother groceries and flowers, and their meeting is so hard because they have to practice social distancing in line with the guidelines. They both wish they could embrace each other as they struggle with knowing that they can't. June stays back at the Airbnb to continue writing, and heads back to the city the next day with their art in tow as she looks for Charlie in New York City. While she appears deflated that she cannot find him, she walks into a solidarity applause for essential workers. People are hitting the pots and pans to thank the doctor, nurses, and medical workers who have to work and face off with the pandemic. Charlie can also hear the applause where he is, which means they are close. She retires home as she can't find him, but one day, a mother and her 2 boys run past her and she gets a flashback. She recollects where Charlie said his mother used to take him and his brother. June heads back to the area outside the city close to the Airbnb where they saw a motel while bike riding. She knocks on the door and finds him. He's shocked to see her but is very happy to see her. They share a kiss and Charlie admits to being in love with June. June is also in love with Charlie, who is a bit surprised she found him. She says it was easy since he said he would be in a motel if the world was ending.
सब्सक्राइब करना भूलना मत जाने मन।